Good morning, everyone. We will just wait another 5 minutes for Ambassador Jumeau. I think he's on his okay. Members of the Secretariat of the National Assembly, former ambassadors of Seychelles, executive members of UNICE staff and students, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you all. My name is Diana Benoit, and I am the director of the Peace and Diplomacy Research Institute. I will be your MC for this event. I am delighted to welcome you to the inaugural Ambassadors Panel, an event organized by our institute at the University of Seychelles. Today also marks one of the several special events celebrating the 15th anniversary of the University of Seychelles. Without further ado, I am pleased to invite the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Seychelles, Ms. Joëlle Perreau, to deliver her welcoming remark and to launch this event.
Members of the National Assembly Secretariat, former ambassadors of Seychelles, executive team members of UNICE, staff and students of UNICE, media representatives, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is my pleasure to welcome you here today at the University of Seychelles to this Ambassadors Panel organized by the James R. Mancham Peace and Diplomacy Research Institute. In 2023, UNICE organized, through our international and local engagement section, an Ambassadors Talk event, where students from secondary schools, professional centers, and UNICE could interact with ambassadors and high commissioners of different countries serving in Seychelles, as well as representatives from the Foreign Affairs Department. It was a very successful event. I am exceptionally pleased to see the Peace and Diplomacy Research Institute in the Faculty of Business and Sustainable Development continuing with this special event we are hosting today. One of the core mandates of the Peace and Diplomacy Research Institute is to contribute to the understanding and promotion of diplomacy and to engage with the youth of Seychelles on related topics such as international relations, diplomatic tradecraft, and Seychelles foreign policy. In line with this objective, the Peace and Diplomacy Research Institute works closely with local stakeholders, notably the Foreign Affairs Department and the National Assembly, to promote academic discussions relevant to Seychelles on diplomacy. Our hope is for UNICE to maintain the Ambassadors Panel as one of its major annual events. Today, we have the honor to welcome some of our former and retired Seychellois ambassadors to share with us their experience in the diplomatic service. They have all served as ambassadors or high commissioners in various Seychelles missions across the globe. Yet, they have different stories to share and have come away with unique experiences of the diplomatic world at both bilateral and multilateral levels. As the University of Seychelles celebrates its 15th anniversary this year, it is our wish that our close collaboration with our esteemed partners continues to flourish with a mutual interest to promote academic discourse and opportunities for our students and youth. I wish to propose, therefore, the creation of a network of Seychellois ambassadors where ideas can be shared for future similar events such as today. I would like to thank you all for your presence and participation in this year's Ambassadors panel. With that being said, I would like to officially launch this special Ambassadors panel at the University of Seychelles. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice-Chancellor. We will now proceed to our panel discussion, which will be followed by a question and answer session. This morning panel features 4 distinguished former or retired Seychellois ambassadors, each with extensive experience working across various continents, advocating for Seychelles on the international stage. Our panelists will each introduce themselves briefly and share insights from their careers, detailing their experiences and challenges during their tenure as ambassadors or high commissioners. Our first speaker, Ambassador Alain Butler-Payette, will lead the discussion on today's chosen theme, an introduction to Seychelles diplomacy. Ambassador Butler-Payette is a seasoned diplomat who began his career in the Foreign Service in 1985. Over the years, he has held several key roles within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, culminating in his appointment as Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the Republic of Seychelles in 1997, followed by his role as Principal Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs the subsequent year. In April 2004, he was appointed Secretary of State in the President's Office, a position he held until 2009, when he transitioned to serve as a senior advisor to President James Michel. During these roles, he was responsible for public affairs and diplomacy. Notably, in July 2007, he became the first Seychelles ambassador accredited to the Holy See. Having retired from public service in 2016, Ambassador Butler-Payette now serves as a consultant to the Foreign Affairs Department. Ambassador Butler-Payette, the floor is yours. You may please.
Thank you, Diana. Now you know all about me. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you. Vice-Chancellor, members of faculty, members of the National Assembly, students, representative of the Department of Foreign Affairs. I hope I've not forgotten anyone. First of all, I would like to thank the University of Seychelles for the invitation extended to us to participate in this panel, in this forum. We are very appreciative of it. In particular, I would like to thank the Sir James Mancham Peace and Diplomacy Research Institute for organizing this forum. At the same time, we extend our sincere congratulations to the University of Seychelles on the celebration of forthcoming celebrations of its 15th anniversary. We're very proud of you as a national institution of higher learning, and we shall support you in whichever way we can. Thank you once again. Now to my little talk. I would like to talk to you today about the origins and the evolution of Seychelles' foreign policy and our diplomacy, the role of our diplomacy. Scholars and historians would agree that the origins, the roots of the Seychelles foreign, let's say, diplomacy can or could be traced to Jean-Baptiste Kio de Cassis, commandant of Seychelles from 1793 to 1811. Jean-Baptiste Kio de Cassis was a military officer by vocation, by profession. In 1793, he was appointed commandant of Seychelles by the French National Assembly. Kio de Cassis was a skillful administrator, but more than that, a wily, cunning negotiator and diplomat. So his first trial in that position came in 1794, when a squadron of British ships led by Captain Newton came to Seychelles and asked for his surrender. Kio de Cassis was so skillful. There are some accounts that he plied Captain Newton and his crew with local drinks, rum, bacca, whatever you want to call it, okay? But in any case, in any event, he got extremely favorable, generous terms for his capturation. What do I mean by that? The British left after a couple of days, but the privileges of the French settlers and the colony, so to speak, were left intact. But moreover, Kio de Cassis was to capitulate 7 times during his tenure as commandant of the French in Seychelles. I mean, he was outgunned, outmanned. There's nothing he could do. Okay, so every time he saw a ship, be it British or otherwise, he would either not float the flag or just pull down the French tricolor and put up the Union Jack. So he was spared all the trials and tribulations of a formal British occupation of the islands until 1811, sorry. But the year prior, the British had formally taken possession of Mauritius, but it took almost a year for the British ship Orpheus to come to Seychelles with the news that Mauritius had been formally possessed by Britain. That was in 1811. So the British put an English commissioner, administrator in place of Kio de Cassis. But Kio de Cassis was such a skillful administrator that the British kept him on as juge de paix, justice of the peace. Okay, and he remained in that position until his death in 1823, I believe, and Kio de Cassis is buried in the grounds of State House. So from that time on, 1811, Seychelles was administered as a dependency of Mauritius. So from 1811 to 1903, when Seychelles became a formal crown colony. We cannot speak of any diplomatic activity during that period. Okay, everything, of course, was decided. All decisions were made by Whitehall. Okay, so there's a long hiatus from 1903 up to the very early 60s with the formation of the main political parties in Seychelles. SPUP was founded in 1963 by François René, and DP the following year by James Richard Mancham. Okay, now those two statesmen today, political leaders each had different ideologies and different political views. Whereas Ronny was more in favor of self-governance at the time, prior to becoming a very staunch advocate of independence. Mancham was, in essence, wanted a closer association with Mauritius. With the UK. He took as an example La Réunion, which was a French territoire d'outre-mer at the time. And also he was inspired by the example of Gibraltar, close association with the United Kingdom. Okay, so there you have the first beginnings of politics, real politics in Seychelles, and at the same time, the first forays of Seychelles in international relations. Why do I say that? Whereas both Sir James and Mr. Ronny lobbied very hard to various quarters for the prevalence of their political views, in a sense that Mr. Mancham was arguing very much for close integration with Britain. Ronny was more for self-governance until the late 60s, when he outright declared himself in favor of independence of Seychelles as a sovereign republic. So the two, Mancham and Ronny, were in conflict. And so there was, I would say, an intense diplomatic activity on the part of both parties, leading to the SPUP, Mr. Ronny's party, being recognized as a liberation party by the OAU Liberation Committee in Tanzania. So that was a major, I would say, a major diplomatic coup for France Albert Ronny. Now, all those early forays in diplomacy, in international relations, culminated in the Lancaster House conferences, the first of which was held in 1970, okay, where SPUP and DP were equally represented. There was a whole series of conferences, culminating in the last conference of January 1976, where the British were firmly of the view, in any case, that independence should be granted to Seychelles. And Mr. Mancham could not contest that. He would say, it is, I'm sorry, I'm into a little bit on the side, in his autobiography, that speaking with British civil servants, the old duplicitous bastards. I'm quoting from him, not my words. Okay. In any case, those agreements in Lancaster House resulted in Seychelles being granted independence on the 29th of June, 1976. With Sir James as first president and Mr. Mancham, Sir James as president and Mr. Ronny as prime minister. In September 1976, Seychelles was formally admitted as a member of the UN, of the United Nations. On that occasion, Sir James made a speech to the United Nations General Assembly, in which he proclaimed that Seychelles is a friend to all and enemy to none. Okay, so that was the drift of his foreign policy, with a strong emphasis on non-alignment, even though he was more aligned with the Western bloc of countries than on any other blocks. Now, that was a change on the 5th of June, 1977, following the coup d'etat or revolution, depending on your perspective of history or how you interpret the history, coup or revolution. I'm sorry, I should mention before that Sir James became the first foreign minister of Seychelles. So he kept that, I won't say kept, he established that portfolio as a Minister of Foreign Affairs. So after the events of 1977, we had a new government, and Mr. Sinon, I'm very proud, very happy that his son is here today, Ambassador Peter Sinon. So Sinon became the first Seychellois foreign minister after the coup or revolution. And you must remember President Ronny's ideology, which was firmly entrenched in socialism. So whilst navigating a very careful course, and also bear in mind at the time, this was the height of the Cold War. Okay, so it was navigating a very careful path between the Eastern and Western Bloc confrontation, but it was more closely aligned with the East than with the West. But at the same time, we did not neglect relations with the traditional partners of Seychelles, to which UK, France, USA, but he also established very close relations with the People's Republic of China, the USSR, and other socialist inclined countries, especially in Africa. So that was the gist of our foreign policy. Minister Sinon was succeeded by we have here Mancham, therefore, as first foreign minister, Sinon, the first foreign minister of the 77, followed by Jacques Odoul, Dr. Maxime Ferrari, Daniel de Saint-Jean, Perry Bonlam, and under whom I had the pleasure, well, I worked with all of them, actually. Pat Pillet, Jean-Paul Adam, Joël Morgan, Vincent Meriton, vice president, but he had the portfolio for it. Last but not least, our good friend, Sylvestre Adegon. So there we are. Now, I want to say that the foreign policy of a country evolves. But, and that's a big but. Governments may come and go, but there is always a continuity to a greater or lesser extent in foreign policy and in international relations. Okay, the emphasis may change, but the broad contours remain the same. Which reminds me of a saying from a British statesman of the 19th century, Lord Palmerston, who said, "There are no permanent enemies and no permanent friends, only permanent interests." Okay? It reflects the idea that in international relations, alliances, enmities as well, are often based on self-interest and can shift according to circumstances. So, in our case, our foreign policy is based primarily on the national interest. What is a national interest? It's the sovereign strategic interest of Seychelles, preserving our territorial integrity the welfare of our people, and the development of our country. And of course, bearing in mind our adherence to the United Nations, the United Nations Charter looms large over our decisions. We cannot neglect that. Okay, so I will very, very briefly talk about the main tenets of the Seychelles foreign policy. There are many, but I will dwell on 6 in particular. Okay, the first one is non-alignment and neutrality. Okay, we're steering a very careful course. But when I say neutrality, we don't take sides in a conflict. But that does not mean that we don't have our own views, okay, which we may, depending on the circumstances, articulate publicly. But bearing in mind that there are big powers out there, and we cannot in any way afford to compete with them or antagonize them. So again, non-alignment, we have to navigate stormy waters. The second tenet, which is also very, very important, is regional integration and cooperation. Seychelles is an active member of regional organizations such as SADC, COMESA, not of course the African Union in first place, SADC, COMESA, the Indian Ocean Commission, Commission de l'Océan Indien, the Indian Ocean Rim Association. Okay, these are the main regional organizations, integration organizations, which are of great interest and importance to Seychelles. Third, advocacy for small island states. This is very important for us. You know, as a small island state, you know, we are lost in that multitude of other states, which, you know, they look at their own interests. Okay, so Ambassador Jumeau will talk more about this later, about the association of small island states, where we make our views heard, the international scene, especially on climate change, and so on and so forth. Fourth, of course, the blue economy and ocean governance. Not surprising, because we're surrounded by the ocean, and the ocean, the Indian Ocean, is our lifeline. Okay, so of course, you know, we are the foremost advocate of the blue economy. I suspect that the international, that other countries, whenever we gather, are a little bit tired of listening to us, always harping on the same theme, the blue economy, especially the multi-dimensional vulnerability index. What do I mean by this? We're saying that the international community should take into consideration the special needs and vulnerabilities of small island states. We're not the same, but we're treated equally as other states. We say, no, there should be a differential treatment, more access to concessional financing to enable us, you know, to face the turmoils both in the financial world and in other spheres. Fifth, peacekeeping and conflict resolution. We have taken part in many conferences and hosted conferences on peacekeeping and the resolution of conflicts. You may remember a number of years ago, President James Michel hosted a conference on the off, bringing together the parties in conflict in Madagascar, which led to a resolution. Okay, so we do our part, but very often we do that, you know, behind the scenes and do not brag about it. But yes, we resolutely in favor of conflict resolution through peaceful means and having especially regard for the UN Charter. Lastly, human rights and democracy. Okay, we uphold those principles of human rights, democracy, and good governance. And those principles are also a central tenet in our diplomatic action. There are many more of those principles and tenets, and I would recommend that you, for more information, you visit the website of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Tourism, where it is clearly outlined. So in conclusion, our foreign policy reflects our unique geographical position as a small island state, and it's our commitment to regional integration, cooperation, environmental protection, and a rules-based global order based on the UN Charter. Now, what do I mean by a rules-based international order? It is not one which the Western Bloc in particular, and NATO in particular, advocate whenever it suits their purposes. We want a multipolar, rules-based order based on the UN Charter, on international law, and not be the global south in general, and not be subjected to diktats or by the rules of a few. So this is basically what I wanted to talk about today. As you will note from our presence here, former ambassadors or retired ambassadors do not, like the cowboys of old, do not simply fade away to sunset, but they continue to remain active in different spheres of life and society, and contribute as much as we can to the country, which has given us so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Butler-Payette, for this very insightful presentation. Our next panelist, Ambassador Ronny Jumeau. Ambassador Jumeau is a former cabinet minister and ambassador of the Republic of Seychelles. He served as cabinet secretary in the president's office and was a cabinet minister from 1998 to 2007, holding portfolios including environment and natural resources. From 2007 to 2020, he was the permanent representative to the United Nations and served as ambassador to the United States, Canada, Brazil, Cuba, and Jamaica. Additionally, he was the roving ambassador for climate change and small island developing states issues. Currently, Ambassador Jumeau is an independent consultant based in Seychelles, specializing in climate change, conservation, and sustainable development, focusing on issues pertinent to island and ocean states. Since 2022, he has been a member of the board of directors of Island Conservation, an international NGO based in Santa Cruz, California, USA. Ambassador Jumeau, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. All protocols observed. Since my colleague, we went to school together. But no one can match the amount of time he spent in the Foreign Service. And I'm going to talk about it, how do you become an ambassador and the different kinds of ambassadors. But first of all, although I said all protocols observe, especially to the Peace and Diplomacy Research Institute. And I agree about you setting up a network. Keep us, we have got so much in our minds, we can't just put it to bed at night, right? We want to put it in service of our country. There are two different ways you usually become an ambassador. You're either a foreign service leader, like Alain was, where that's been your life, that was his life. And then you have political appointees. One country that is strong on political appointees, they have its pros and cons, is the country where I spent 13 years, my entire service as an ambassador, the United States, where when a government changes, everybody goes, new people come in. Everything changes, even ambassadors. And this is one of the countries which has ambassadors who have the least experience in diplomacy and foreign service, and some of them know nothing about it and leave, and they still don't know anything about it. They were rewarded it because they gave donations to whoever became president for that. Alan talked about the evolution of foreign service and diplomacy. And I evolved to a state where I became an ambassador who was the only ambassador of his type at the United Nations and still the only one in Seychelles ever, which involved me sometimes in speaking truth to power in a way that was very undiplomatic, but made me in demand internationally as an international speaker because they said, we've never heard an ambassador speak like you. One of the things that I talked about codependency, one of the terms he used was outmanned. We've always been outmanned. We always will be outmanned. We will never have enough people for the foreign service. It doesn't mean that you're being outthought. And it certainly, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't mean you're going to be being outspoken in another sense of the word. You're becoming outspoken, on the contrary. But in certain areas, I'm proud to say, when Seychelles delegation enters a room, people know the Seychellois. Certain areas of both diplomacy and other areas, as Alain said, the foreign service in old times was mainly based on peace and security, especially when the Europeans kept going to war with each other. It was a form of diplomacy, especially when you have trouble at home, you go to war to divert people's attention. But as the independence movement, liberation movements in the developing world, which was then called the Third World, no longer, we're not third to anybody, grew, development issues came to the fore. And development issues became a threat to peace, global peace and security. As they say, future wars will be fought over water because of climate change. Climate change is a threat multiplier. It's a threat. And I was part of inspiring Maldives to make climate change a human rights issue, and with the Pacific, made it become an issue of the UN Security Council. I haven't totally succeeded because the Western powers are used to this old thinking that the UN is a successor of the League of Nations, is there to prevent war, disaster, and that sort of thing. So it's peace and security. We at the UN have a joke. If there's an outbreak, a breakdown of peace, or an outbreak of war anywhere, if you want to make it worse, take it to the UN Security Council. And we coined different terms. There's the group of 15, the group of this, for example, the UN is the group of, 134. That's the General Assembly. Then there's the groups of 77 and China, which was diluted by the group of 20, which is something else. And then when things really hit the fan, then you have the G2, which is US and China. And nowadays it's about the G2. In response to that, developing countries, small islands, but Seychelles is a particular example, is we decided to stand up and speak out. And I will tell you something, the truth now. Within the UN system, Seychelles were part of Africa, Commonwealth, Francophonie, the Alliance of Small Island States, the SIDS, the so-called small island developing states. That's where they made the mistake by calling us small. And we decided to show them that even a mosquito can bother an elephant. I've been to 13 COPs, climate COPs, in succession. The only person who's been to more climate COPs than me is Wills Agricole, who is the PS of climate environment and then did the climate change. And we decided within the Alliance of Small Island States to become within the international diplomatic foreign service circuit, become what we call outliers, disruptors, who speak truth to power. As I said, there are certain issues where you're very careful about what you say. We can't go on the world stage and start mouthing off on the Gaza war or Ukraine war. Well, we make we stick to the UN route. But there are certain areas, you come into my backyard, I'm going to tell you off. You threaten my existence, not through peace and security, but through climate change, which is not of our making. I'm going to tell you off. And Seychelles, and this is what happened at the UN. So, as was said, I was a minister for 9 years. Prior to that, I'm very proud to have been the first cabinet secretary of the Third Republic after the multi-party elections. And I have a colleague there, one of my successors is Bernard. I'm very proud of that. And as part of the minister, I was Minister of Agriculture and Marine Resources, then Culture and Information. Then I became the first standalone Minister of Environment of Seychelles. Prior to my appointment, environment was always part of a bigger ministry. One of the most famous environment ministers actually was Madame de Sinon, who had a super ministry. And then it was at times held by the president, at times held by the vice president. And then President Ronny at the time made me the first separate standalone Minister of Environment. And then he had the natural resources, which made me the Minister of Environment, Agriculture, Fisheries, whatever. That was to shape my role as Seychelles' first roving ambassador on climate and small island issues. When I went to see two things, I remember. When I was appointed ambassador, before I left, I made a round of the local foreign diplomats, resident Seychelles ambassadors. I went to see the French ambassador. I had good terms with him. And at the time, there was a buzz in Seychelles. Ronny's being demoted. He was a minister, now he's become an ambassador. That didn't bother me. I had plans. Because I was going to go global. And what the French ambassador is one of the things he said to me. He said, Ronny, first of all, before I comment on this, I want to know how you feel, because what I'm going to say to you now, here's being a diplomat, what I'm going to say to you will depend on what you tell me. And he said, Ronny, how are you taking this? You were a well-known minister, Minister for Environment, very popular at the time. Environment was rising on the agenda, globally, regionally, nationally. How do you take this? I remember I said to him, I said, it's New York. What I meant, that's the political capital of the world because of the United Nations. It's one of the financial capitals of the world because of Wall Street. It is one of the cultural capitals of the world. You name it. When you go to the US, I spent 13 years in the US. And whenever I step out of New York, I met an American. Where are you based? New York. New York is not the USA. Americans tell you, New York is not the USA. It's a melting pot. It's metropolitan. Republicans hate New York. The second President Bush said, whenever I go into New York, I feel like I'm in enemy territory. Right. It's so democratic, so liberal. It's a thought place. And that's New York. I said, the president's opened the door. I don't know what's going to happen on the other side of it, but I'm stepping from it. You know what happened when I walked through it? I grew wings and I flew. And I went to see President Michel at the time, who appointed me, and he said, Mr. President, what would you like me to do? And the first thing he said to me, I do not want you to be a normal ambassador to the UN. He said, follow the money. Meaning, one of your roles is to get funding for Seychelles, which means if you're going to get funding for Seychelles, at the time we were an upper middle income country and now a highly developed country, categorized, it means you have to go into areas which are not necessarily the foraging grounds of ambassadors from foreign services, but where the money is. So you have to bring your foreign service into it. This is how we ended up with the first desk for the ocean, the first blue bond, the blue economy. It came not through the ministries of finance or the ministries of environment or the ministries of fishery. It came through the foreign ministry. We made the initial contacts and then it was handed over. So, oh yes, the French ambassador who also told me something I never forgot. He said, you've been a minister for 9 years. Seychelles, you are a very big fish in a very small pond. In New York, you're going to be a very small fish in a very big pond. And he was thinking, oh, see, small island states are small countries. I didn't share that. I'm not going to be a small fish being eaten up by a big fish in a big pond. I shifted my thinking from small island developing state to big. I don't like using large ocean state. Large ocean states, LOS means a loss. You're already writing off the seas. They're going to disappear with climate change. I'm a big ocean state. I'm a boss. I'm going to act like it. I'm going to speak like it. And there are certain fields where I'm going to outspeak you because I know more than you. There are other certain fields, okay, yeah. You take the lead on that. So I was ambassador to the UN twice, actually. I was there from 2007 to 2020. I retired in 2021. For the first time, I was from 2007 to 2012. I was permanent representative to the United Nations, ambassador to Brazil, Cuba, Jamaica. I'm not sure whether I did present my credentials to Venezuela. A bunch of us turned up in the time of Hugo Chavez. It was such a mess. We're not sure whether we were ever accredited or not. And we were waiting for others. We were, at that time, in New York, you were ambassador for the whole Americas, Canada. Later it changed. We had an ambassador in Cuba to take care of the Caribbean and Latin, South America, not Latin America, South America. You learn the differences between South America, Central America, Latin America. You learn those. Be careful when you talk to them about this. And then in 2012, when there was a rotation of ambassadors, and Ambassador Vice-Chancellor came to replace me, I had by then, I got that 2007. By 2008, I was already acting like a roving ambassador for climate change and small island developing states. It was formalized to keep me in New York when Vice-Chancellor came over. How that happened, talking about how things evolve, is when I got to New York and Seychelles was receiving invitations, the Ministry of Environment, it's always environment and something else, but Ministry of Environment in Seychelles would get invitations to speak internationally or at the UN in New York, because the UN is all over the world. I remember the first email that the then minister sent, they said, we already have in New York a PR who was a minister of environment. So he knows what he's going to talk about. And that was unusual in the UN system. Once again, most people in the UN system, apart from the UN, because UN is a bit of a different creature, come from diplomatic services or your political appointees. So your specialty is foreign affairs of your country, international affairs, strong on peace and security and stability around the world. More and more, especially with the SDGs on sustainable development issues. And I became in demand in the UN to speak on issues of biodiversity, sustainability, climate change, small islands, all the renewable energy, you name it. Whenever at the UN, they would say, now we need someone to speak for the islands on this, on that. I know, Ambassador Jumeau. That's when I began speaking and getting involved in all these things. And the more I spoke, and then Seychelles sometimes would say to me, there's a meeting somewhere else outside of the Americas that you're going to attend, but this is based on this. I became in demand. And at one time, the European Commission said, you're on our list of speakers. And I reached a stage where I had to turn down appointments, invitations. I couldn't cope. I was traveling too much. And Foreign Affairs at the time, it was Minister Adam who once told me, he says, Ronny, when you get these invitations, you can't go. Can you send it to us? We'll send someone. I said, the invitations are not for Seychelles, they're for me. But Seychelles came along. And that's how Seychelles, in these non-traditional fields, I would say, I can't speak for all small island states, but let me speak about Seychelles, because I know what I'm going to talk about. Seychelles also concerns all small island coastal littoral states. And that's how Seychelles name came as Seychelles Speaks For. It helped that we were leading on issues like innovative financing. Let's hope some blue bonds. There are so many things I found out we were leading until I got to there. Then I found out there were things we were doing in Seychelles which we assumed other small islands were doing. They weren't. And this is the thing about Seychelles. We think there are things we do we think is normal. And then you go abroad and you find other small islands and say, what possessed you to do this? How many people do you have? Less than 100,000. You did this. What was in your mind? It was visionary leadership. It was daring to speak up. I was known for speaking on panels at the drop of a hat. We like to speak with a speaker's drop. What's the title? This. I'm there. For 13 years. I never traveled unless you paid my accommodation and my airfare. Never traveled. Seychelles got a roving ambassador free of charge. They didn't give me once. And when I became ambassador a second time to the UN in 2017, I said, what about the roving ambassador? You continue doing that. Not a cent more in terms of any inducement. I loved it. That's when we began speaking. That's when we became a leader. That's when we helped the developing world G7 to push development issues into a prime focus of the UN General Assembly of Foreign Affairs. That foreign affairs is not just about peace and security. Sometimes you have wars because of poverty. You have wars because of climate change. The West doesn't like it when you say that the Darfur problem was a climate change war. It wasn't about genocide. It became because of the division between the North and the South. The North were Muslim, they were more Arabic, the South were animists, they were more African. What happened was because of a drought, the people in the North, in the South began seeking water in the North, and the North responded. But it was a climate issue. It was a development issue. The war in Gaza shows you that colonization is still active and present. It's a recolonization. They're trying to. So this is when Seychelles got this reputation. And I'll finish on a conversation I had with the current Minister of Finance, I said I attended 13 COPs. Glasgow COP, the first COP that President Ramkalawan and his government attended. And during a break, I was speaking. I was funded by SECAT then, one of the proudest achievements of my career. And I said to the Minister of Finance, Mr. Ali Hassan, I said, when you go around this COP, which are the most attended COPs, 85,000 people attended the job. Too big, unmanageable. 85,000. In between COPs, you meet in Bonn to debrief on the previous COP and prepare for Bonn this time, 30,000. He doesn't deserve 30,000. Bonn can't take 30,000. So I said to Ambassador Hassan, Minister Hassan, I said, when you go around and you say, you're from Seychelles, what's the reaction? And he said, oh my God. He said, as soon as we walk into it, he said, you're Seychelles. Oh my God. The ocean people. You're the net swap people. You're the blue one people. You guys are doing crazy things. I'll finish with two sayings I have. First of all is that do not be defined by the small island. I am small only in terms of the size of my land territory and my population. How many of you know that over 102,000 people in Seychelles, 16% are foreign workers, as we call them, guest workers? We're not even 100,000 people. Seychellois. Do not be defined by small. I tell them, don't judge us by the size of our country or population, judge us by the size of our ambition. We are a big ocean state. We are a boss on these issues. We are setting the tone. What we did in innovative financing, even the big countries, we're not just a thought leader in the sense, we're not just a thought leader in Africa, we are a thought leader in the world in certain areas. Know your areas. That's the reason why I was invited to speak all over the world, because they say, the way you speak, people say, oh my God, where's he from? And then within the AOC, they began saying, they heard others speak, they heard other people speak. They said, Seychelles are good speakers. And the reason we're good speakers is because we speak with confidence. If you're proud of your country, you will speak out there in ways that people, someone said to me, Ronny, I'm going to write an ambassador from Solomon's, a friend from Solomon Islands. When I get back home, I'm going to write to the UN Secretary General. I say, Seychelles is no longer a small island developing states. You guys do crazy things. And that's because we come from this background, this country, that if you read social media, that's not the impression you get amongst us Seychelles. And everybody who goes abroad, and once they're abroad, you discover another Seychelles. Another Seychelles in the eyes of foreigners, which is not always the best thing. Because, for example, I once met someone from the European Union and said, where are you from, Seychelles? Oh, you don't need any help, you're okay. That's the downside. But there are others saying, Seychelles, oh my God. Commonwealth Secretariat, they got problems from the Caribbean, because there are three regions of the Alliance of Small Island States. The Caribbean, which is the largest, about 16 countries. The Pacific, the PCs, 14 countries. And ACE, our region, 9 countries. And they said, but Caribbean countries are complaining how much attention we're giving to Seychelles. The Seychelles is up there with Barbados, Bahamas, Trinidad. Trinidad only because we have oil and gas, otherwise they wouldn't be up there. Sorry, I speak like that. That's fact. And I said, then why do you give us attention? Because they help us with the economy. And they said, because you guys, setters, you're out there. You're the big edge spies. And once, I never forget when the ambassador of Singapore, the UN, was visiting Seychelles, and took the ambassadors on a tour. Ambassadors and ministers, environment ministers from small island developing states. And the ambassador of Singapore said, Ronny, I'm impressed. I am so impressed that you managed to do what you're doing. We took them to the viewpoint that I always tell everybody in foreign affairs, take foreign ministers to the viewpoint at La Misère and say, below you is the economic history of Seychelles. And he said, you managed to do this and keep your country green, the way it is. He said clean. We all here will disagree. It's not as clean as you do. We know where to find that. It's not as clean as it is. But people tell you compared to others and the things we do, as I always say, with that small population, we have to find everybody from a grave digger to a president and everything in between we have to find. We will never find enough. Never. Forget it. This is why it's important to fight xenophobia and that sort of thing in Seychelles. We will always need foreign workers. It depends on where they work, what type of foreign workers. Let's call them guest workers. Sometimes it's disturbing in Seychelles when you hear xenophobic. After all of us come from foreign sources. There was no one in Seychelles. If tortoises could speak, they'd be like the Native Americans telling the Americans, you want immigrants to go home first yourself. I was here when you landed. If tortoises could speak, they would say that to us. None of us. Some of us arrived, we just happened to be on the boat that arrived first. And there are others who came by before us, they didn't stay. Seychelles was not discovered by Vasco da Gama. That's a Eurocentric story. It was the Arab voyagers, traders. Right? And with that background, what we're finding now in Seychelles, as a result, and I'm very proud that the Foreign Service of Seychelles cannot afford to be the traditional foreign service like the British Foreign Service, where it's more peace and security. Because of the development challenges, they are the first responders in a sense. And when you're abroad as an ambassador, when people are looking for someone, who do I contact in Seychelles? They come to us. You can't say, oh, it's not me, I'm doing foreign service. I'm more worried about development issues than the war in Ukraine or Gaza. For Gazans, but anyway. I'm more worried about the war in Gaza because what it does to our tourism because of flights over. That's what worries me. But G77, the developing world, the rise of China, now the rise of BRICS, changes things. The rise of BRICS is a foreign affairs issue. It's an economic body, but it's going to change foreign relations, depending on how it goes, because it's money talks. So I would, if there are students here, future leaders, don't hesitate. This is at least one area where when you go abroad, you say, I'm from Seychelles, people say, wow. There was a time they said, wow, you're beautiful. Now they say, wow, you guys are thought leaders. You guys are leaders in so many fields that are important to the future peace and security of the world. You are finding answers. As I always say, from small islands come big ideas. Invest in us, you won't regret it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Jumeau. Indeed, from small islands come very big ideas. Our third panelist is Ambassador Peter Sinon. Ambassador Sinon is a former minister and high commissioner, having diplomatically represented Seychelles in South Africa and Namibia, as well as with regional organizations such as SADC, COMESA, and the OAU or AU. During his tenure as High Commissioner, he was instrumental in ensuring Seychelles' active presence and participation in regional SADC and COMESA activities, emphasizing the importance of regional integration initiatives and processes. Ambassador Sinon is also an accomplished economist and currently serves as the chairperson of the Seychelles Small Hotels and Establishments Association, where he continues to contribute to the development and promotion of smaller scale hospitality ventures in Seychelles. Ambassador Sinon, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Morning all. Thank you for this occasion, organizing and happy birthday to the university. In fact, as an economist, in the beginning, when this idea came about, I was asked, what is your opinion? What we want to do at university? Benofo? Said, what? No, it will not work. We don't have enough people for a university. How are we going to, who's going to pay? Whatever. And I said, no, we'll bring students and all these ideas. But there you are, 15 years later, the university is here, it's working, and I own up. I was wrong. But I was the economist then, was looking at the figures only the figures. Well, I started my career as an economist, but as Ronny said, Madame de Séjour had a super strong ministry. The ministry was for environment, the ministry was foreign affairs, but the ministry was also for economic planning. And I was in the economic planning division as an economist. And I rose from being economist, senior economist, principal economist, director of planning. And then when I got to director of planning, for me it came as a bit of a surprise because I was nominated to be the ambassador in South Africa. And I thought it was a bit weird. Why am I being sent there? But I was happy because I felt I was desk officer for African Development Bank then, and all these guys come from Africa, and I knew, even when I was in university, and my logic was, why? That is why I chose development economics instead of just economics. Because I said, if I choose just economics and go into all these things, I'm competing with somebody in the UK, United States, to get a job somewhere in Europe or elsewhere. But if I do development economics, that's where the jobs are. That's where it's developing. That's where I'm needed most. So even then, back then, I knew I'd be going to Africa, but I never knew I would be going to open the first Seychelles resident embassy on the continent of Africa. That's what Peter was told to go and do. And I went. My boss became then Ambassador Mr. Bernard Shamlaye. He was High Commissioner to go to the UK, and I went to South Africa. To anybody who aspires to become and be an ambassador one day, do your homework before you go. Because I had no idea that South Africa was so cold, can be cold at times. I got there, I left the wife and the family behind, and with all my Seychelles clothes, and I had coats and this and that. I left that back. Last week, he said, so last weekend and one, that's what they know. So I go away. But I got to Pretoria. I was given a house. I stayed in that 2-bedroom house, big house, but lots of holes everywhere. It was not that the European double glazing business. No. So I found in that house a little store. And it was quite insulated, that little store. So as the ambassador, because I remember that very well, I put a mattress on that floor. I had my fax machine beside me just in case I get something emergency, and I slept on the floor. I remember that night I had blankets galore. I had bought a little heater to heat that little room. That night I sat and said, okay, to leave is say, win the base, la fuerza, on est qui pouvait avoir, la window me out there. But for king and country, Jatini. So that was my first introduction to being ambassador. But then everything, I started getting used to it. I started getting my eaters, etc. And on the day of my presentation of credentials to President Thabo Mbeki then, you know, when you get to countries on your own to sail, you get scared. So you thought, I have to exercise so not to get sick. Because if I get sick, there's nobody to come and see me for lave mon linge, mon affaire. So I was gym friendly. Every morning, gym. The day before, I gym a lot, to be healthy for tomorrow. The next day, I woke up from the floor, muscle stiff. But for king and country, Peter, I got there. It was a nice day. Now, South Africa. South Africa is one of the most developed countries of the continent. It was, and still probably is, a hub and center. So, SADC, COMESA, I also was affiliated with those organizations. As Alain said, regional integration. When I asked the minister, I remember then, what am I supposed to do there? Your priority is economic diplomacy. Do the regional integration and this and that and get involved. And where can we get involved? So Peter attended all the SADC meetings that you can imagine, COMESA meeting, SADC meetings. And at my level, it was okay. At my level, I knew all the ambassadors, we were friends. But then you had summits. The summit start, the ambassadors, officials meet, and then the ministers' council meet, and then the presidents come after the ministers have gone through the work of the senior officials. I am a senior official. So I attend my meeting, the minister come, and somehow Seychelles, the president never came. Mr. Winner at that time. He never attended any summit. And I stayed there for 3-4 years. I think I became president about 3 times. So they tell me, my colleagues look at me and say, Ambassador, where is your president? My president is sick, busy. Elections are coming. I gave all the excuses under the sun. But the one I remember so well was when Seychelles was slated to be sanctioned for non-payment of membership. So recommended by the council, the ambassadors. I tried to fight, but I could not. Then the minister came. He could not fight. Still recommendation to sanction. There were 2 countries being sanctioned. There was Seychelles and DRC. And then the summit. So all the big planes are coming. Everybody's busy going to meet their president. Then the protocol came. Ambassador, but where is your president? president is very busy. Is he coming? I said, I think he's coming, but I'm not sure. But it's tomorrow. I said, yes. But you must move to his room. I said, what? You come to his room. So I went, followed him. Now I said, no, I have to pick up my stuff. No, don't worry. Took my things, 2 guys, took my suitcase. And I was taken to a suite, nice suite. And I came in, flowers, there was all the drinks you can imagine. There was fruits. So I was there. I'm thinking now, Peter, tomorrow, what are you going to do? You are going to be the president of your country, to be sanctioned by presidents. You're being mad. Then I started trembling. You get scared. But I knew President Mbeki had an advisor. His nickname was Mkise. He was a good friend of mine. So I called Mkise. I said, my friend, your friend is not well. Come and see me. No, I said, I come and see you. So he said, yeah, okay. So I put my jacket on. I went to the door. I opened the door. 6 guys stood up. And I said, hello. Everything okay? Yeah. I said, okay. Okay. I went back in. And he said, there's 6 guys outside my door. He said, brother, you are the president. Wherever you go, they will come with you. I said, no, I can't go anywhere with these guys. He says, okay, open the door, tell them that I am coming to see you. Let me go through. Went outside. There's a gentleman coming to see me. Yes, sir. So Kise came. He used to like his little Kuwazi, and there was a bottle there. So we were very lucky. I said, what's the problem? He said, Kise, they are going to put me on the sanction tomorrow. We will be having the elections, and it's going to be bad for Seychelles and bad for home as well, because then just before the elections, now we will be sanctioned. I said, Ambassador, what have you got? What do you mean, what have I got? Did you write to the secretariat to tell them you wanted delay, etc.? And in my file, I had a letter signed by Mr. Shamlaye, the governor of Central Bank, but it was 1 year old, that letter. I said, I have just this. That 1 year old letter. He looked at me and said, let's have a drink. Give me that letter. Gave him that letter, he went away. And that was the man. I had the file for the president. And in there, my letter that is with me was not in the file. When we got to the meeting, but he asked me, you only allowed presidents to take 5 people with you to the meeting. You have 5 tickets to give to your staff. So I gave him. I said, you can just don't put your people there. Put the South Africans, but the ones that look like Seychellois. He said, what do they look like? I said, like everybody. So you can put anybody, any 5. So here's Peter, walks in. And at that time, Mugabe of Zimbabwe were having his comrades taking land with it. There was a closed meeting of presidents. Now I'm in that meeting of presidents, closed meeting. Ministers were left outside. Me, I'm not even a minister. But I'm inside. Play food. Then I remember the president of Zimbabwe. He said, what is this? What is this? We are SADC. We can't have this on TV. This is wrong. Mugabe was the coolest guy. And they put him next to me. Comme si that's a pretty low and that morning. I said, good morning, sir. My name is the President. And who are you? Mr. President, from Seychelles. How is my good friend Albert Rene? He was coming, but he got a little bit of bronchitis. Said, oh, wish him well, wish him well, wish him well. That's what he did. They are all shouting, he sits there. Mr. Chairman, let me call my Minister of Lands and my Minister of Foreign Affairs to explain what we are doing in Zimbabwe. Now, his Minister of Foreign Affairs is a big guy called Dr. Mdenge. He was my good friend. He called me son. And he used to tell me why they doing what they do, whatever. So he came. Now, I had a huge respect for this guy. So when he walked into the room, I got up to give him the seat beside this president. I was about to get up ahead. Sit down. You are the president. Okay. I sat down. And I looked at Mdenge. I said, so they explained. Now me, I'm trembling. Why? Because I think if what happens in this room leaks to the press, they will look around the room, they will say, that young man there, probably he went and leaked that to the press, but there was nobody there. But nobody leaked anything. The press didn't get what was happening. But I noticed that after that, for dinner, I was with President Mugabe Memo on the table with Grace and Mr. Mugabe. That was his punishment. It was that I felt. That was an experience. But what happened at the meeting? Morning meeting, South Africans behind me, my 5 tickets. When it came to Congo, contributions, Republic of Congo, the decision is to sanction the Republic of Congo, and I saw President Kabila is there. He's sitting there, so he let them talk, and then he says, put his hand up. Yes, President. Mr. Secretary General, Mr. President, because the president hosting, the country hosting the summit is presiding, the president. So beside him sits the Secretary General of SADC. Mr. President, if you give the Secretary General the floor, he will explain there's been a development last night that may sort out this issue. So Ramsamy took the floor. Oh yes, there's been a development last night. We have received a transfer of $500,000. So basically, the recommendation for sanction for DRC Congo is null and void. What? Then me, second Seychelles, I thought, oh my God, I hope we have paid something. I hope we have paid something. Recommendation to put Seychelles in the section. Seychelles, do you have anything to say? Yeah, yes, sir. I rambled on about being small size and economies of scale and the fact that we have to build an airport. Even South Africa, the airport, the size of South Africa, the airport is the same size of our airport because the Boeing needs that size. So nobody talks about per capita cost. Everybody talks about per capita income. And I went on and on and on with this. The guy president from Malawi. No, Malawi. She was sitting right in front of me. Says, we hear you. My country has a per capita income of $200 per capita. You, Seychelles, you have the highest per capita of all of us in this room. We are poor, he said, but we pay. We are poor, but we pay because we believe, we are committed, blah, 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 blah. Because everyone like, Maman dit, vous êtes laissé ouvert, moi, donc là, went on. After I finished, everybody chocolaté comme si. Bon, affaire, t'as dit, là. This guy raised his hand. Yes, Mr. President Mbeki. And he said, Mr. Chairman, we have a long agenda, and we should not let this issue take much of our time, because in my understanding, there is a letter that he knows I'm not a minister. He knows I'm just an ambassador. But he says, Excellency, there is something there in the file. Everybody goes, what? Even the Secretary General of SADC was like, what? He says, open on page, whatever page he said, and everybody opened. And there was the Chancellor's letter. That he was in all their files, but not in mine. The letter was there. I don't know if the date in the letter was changed, but he said, there is the letter. I think Excellency has explained that they need a bit more time. It is written there. And we know of the economies of case issue, but they said they need some time. So let us move on. South Africa speaks. Everybody shuts up. Even this Bakili, whatever his name was, talking. And the chairman looked at the SG and said, we move on. If you ask me, how did you feel? For me, I just heard the angels, hallelujah, hallelujah. And obviously afterwards, I had to invite Nkize back to celebrate. So we celebrate with all the free drinks that they had. But it was an experience, and I asked him after a few whiskeys, Nkize, how did you do this? He said, my friend, I was a militant in the service of Nkonto Wesizwe. That was the military arm of the ANC. He was out of the country. He had to pass all these things, papers. He says, I used a little bit of the skills I had then. It is possible. So in diplomacy, sometimes some people play it a little bit more better than others, and we were helped on that occasion, big time. And apart from being the president a few times, it's amazing being the president. You walk down and the children are there with the flags. Welcome, Seychelles. And all my colleagues are watching saying, Naima, you come here, you were in a gray suit. And then you become a darker suit. Now you are in a black suit and you are sunglass being the president. I said, it's part of the job, all part of the job. At the OAU as well, the AU, I became the president there too. That was even funnier. In Togo, when they came, to say, where's your? I said, no, nobody. Come, give me a suite on the 28th floor. One day I had to come down, went to the lift. You can't get the lift because all the presidents are fighting for the lift. You could see the bodyguards fighting, my president, my president. I said, Peter, oh, take the stairs, this and that. When I was going on the stairs, I saw Kofi Annan, Yoshi. And we got in, we put us all in a bus. They give you a badge, you put your badge, and that shows that you are the president. So I had my badge. But Libya, his comrade Gaddafi, the brother leader, he has these women bodyguards. I did not know. I ambled a little bit too close to him. This woman, two women came, they told me by my butt like this, my butt. And they said, yeah, I'm the president! Oh, and I explained everything. The ones that saw me, only in Africa, my friend, but only in Africa. So Africa was nice. It could be difficult sometimes, but I spent my good time there. Made a lot of friends. They are very nice people. And we did make inroads into the COMESA SADC to the point that I even stood for Secretary General of SADC, but I didn't win. But my candidate was put there to be part of SADC's Secretary General. I think it was our turn, but then there was a woman fighting against me. The woman won. You know, I knew she was going to win anyway. But that was the long and short. If I had to say anything, I'm glad Alain is here. The communication between headquarters and the embassy is very important. Very important. We went there. My wife is there. And one day I asked her, are you getting your spouse allowance? She said, no. So I called. I said, hey, what about the spouse allowance? And then Mr. Sinon, she's not your wife. She's not your spouse. So I turned to my wife. I said, call your mom. We are going to get married. And probably that is the reason her surname is not Sinon. She kept her surname as Persad, and I am Sinon. But we are married for the certificate. I send the certificate, so they send the spouse allowance. But at the wedding, I did this. I went to a school, and I said, I want to come and serve, in service. I said, no problem. And I was walking out, I turned around, I said, and by the way, I want all the people that come to serve to be white South Africans. They found that funny. They said, what? No, yes. They'll be treated very well. I give them tip everything. Then I invited all the people in South Africa, my colleagues, especially foreign affairs, and they looked around. They see these white young men, young women running around. And then one of them looked at me and says, did you make that on purpose? I said, what? What? He said, see, you are in South Africa, we have lots of black people in South Africa. How you got only white servants there? I said, how long have you been in South Africa? You've been serving them. Today they are serving you. I will end with this.
Thank you, Ambassador Sinon. Very amusing and very interesting part of being an ambassador. You get to become the president as well. Our final panelist today is Ambassador Bernard Shamlaye. Ambassador Shamlaye has served as a minister and was the ambassador of Seychelles to France and various other European countries. He also held the position of Seychelles permanent representative to several prominent international organizations, including UNESCO, the Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie, and the Bureau International des Expositions, amongst others. With a rich background in the field of education, Ambassador Shamlaye will share his insight and experiences in this area during his deliberation today. Ambassador Shamlaye, the floor is yours.
Everybody, and happy anniversary to the university. I remember the day 2009 when the university was launched. I think a few years before that, I made an address at the graduation of the NIE. And I think I said that the NIE, that a lot of the work that the NIE does is at university level, but the NIE is not a university, and perhaps one day it could be. And when I was coming out, I was talking to President Michel, and I remember him saying that there will soon be a university. A few years later, the university was launched. And thank you to the James R. Mancham Peace and Diplomacy Institute for organizing this panel, bringing us together, made me try and remember what I did in Paris quite a number of years ago now. I'll try to respond to some of the pointers that Brian Adlin gave us to guide us for this presentation. Journey to becoming an ambassador. As Ronny explained, there are career diplomats, people who grow up in foreign relations like Alain, and who become ambassadors, and they are career diplomats. In my case, I was not a career diplomat, perhaps more an appointee by the president at that time. And in my case, because of my age, I was growing quite old. It was an end of career appointment as well. So what was I prepared to become an ambassador? Not from having grown up in foreign affairs, but I suppose having been a senior officer in ministries and having been a minister, you get exposed to international fora and things like that. So that helps. And having an interest all the time in international relations, current affairs also helps. And I suppose in the case of France, having a fair knowledge and experience of the French language helped in my case to take up the appointment in France. But just to point out that many ambassadors in France do not necessarily speak French. They speak their language. So this is not speaking the language of the country is not a closing door matter. So I went to France in August 2012 and I left in March 2017. I just realized that my period as ambassador coincided more or less with the presidency of François Hollande. I left just before President Macron was elected. So the responsibilities, my responsibilities, I was ambassador to France and a number of other countries, Andorra, Austria, Italy, Monaco, Portugal, Spain, the Russian Federation, Turkey, And I should have been ambassador to Morocco as well, except that I never got the response that the Foreign Affairs Ministry sent for me to be accredited to Morocco. I did attend a conference in Morocco, but not as accredited ambassador, just as a representative of the country. In the case of Spain, I could work as an ambassador, but I was never, I never had the opportunity of presenting my credentials to the king. I presented, I had meetings and I went, because in Spain it's rather complicated. You go first and have a meeting with all the officials and so on, and you kind of get a waiting status to be accredited by meeting the king, and that never happened. Yes. Okay, and so you're ambassador to countries, and then you are permanent delegate to multilateral organizations. So I was permanent delegate to organizations to which Seychelles belong, of which Seychelles is a member, based in the countries to which I was accredited. So, for example, in France, I was permanent delegate to UNESCO, to OIF, and to the Bureau International des Expositions. This is a small but important organization. It's the organization that is responsible for all those international universal exhibitions, like the last one in Dubai and the one coming up in Japan in a number of years. I remember the Singapore ambassador said to me, Singapore is not a member of the Bureau International des Expositions because we are small and we will never host a universal exposition. And so I had to think quickly and say, but because I suppose he was asking, why are you, who are smaller than we are, a member of that organization? I didn't know, but I had to think quickly. And I said, oh, but because we are small, it's a way of exercising influence, because countries come to us to lobby for us, to vote for them, to host the exhibition. And so we also of exposing ourselves to the world. Important for us, important for our tourism industry. I had to make it up on the spot. And, voilà. Okay, and in Italy, the multilateral organizations are FAO and IFAD. IFAD is the International Fund for Agricultural Development. Mr. Sinon knows that well. He was Minister of Agriculture. In Austria, there is the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency. We don't belong to it because we are an atomic power, but because a nuclear power, but because we have projects that uses nuclear or radioactivity systems, and we have important projects with them in agriculture, in health, so. Then our diplomatic mission in France also has a consular mission. So we work through honorary consuls who are in different places, in different towns in France. When I was in France, we had a consulate general in Paris and consulates in Rouen, Lyon, Bordeaux, Marseille. And in the other countries, like in Italy, in Russia, in Turkey, we also had honorary consuls that look after the interests of Seychelles in terms of consular affairs, looking after the welfare as appropriate of Seychellois nationals in those countries. And roles of the ambassadors, I think our colleagues have spoken about these, to represent Seychelles and promote and protect the interests through both bilateral relations between countries and multilateral relations in international organizations. And as has been mentioned, one important role is to maintain good relations with countries and on the international field, and always the idea of peace and development as broad aims. Peter mentioned the importance of liaising and having good communications with the capital, both for personal matters, but also for your work as a diplomat. So you have always to liaise with the capital to receive guidance and to keep them informed, to keep the capital informed about what is going on in the country. Well, because I was based in Paris, especially in France, because you cannot cover Moscow or Ankara and so on. It's just too much. I saw that as ambassador, part of the work also was to facilitate, to organize, to support the visit of Seychelles dignitaries, say the president, vice president, ministers, and other delegations that come to the country where you are based. And as I said, assist Seychellois, that's the consular side, nationals as appropriate. In my time in Paris, the areas that we focused on, areas that were of particular attention, you won't be surprised because those areas have been mentioned. Seychelles as a small island developing state, one of 39, our specificities, our vulnerabilities, sustainable development potential, but also Seychelles as a big ocean state. The environment, biodiversity, climate change, the blue economy, the debt for nature swap that Ronny talked about, tourism, including cultural tourism, maritime security, the fight against piracy off the coast of Somalia, agriculture and fisheries, especially in relation to IFAD and FAO, and education, training, science, and culture. These are the areas that I had to be involved in and that I had to push in a sense. Of course, there is overlap between those areas and overlap in your work in the efforts to promote them and defend them in Seychelles' interests. Challenges that Seychelles Embassy, such as the one in Paris, has. I will mention one main challenge, and that Ronny alluded to that, and that's the mission has very little staff. Basically, it's the head of mission, the ambassador, and the secretary, a diplomatic secretary, either second or third secretary, and then an office manager and a chauffeur. But as colleagues pointed out, we do the best that we can, and we do what is required, and we don't allow our size to prevent us from doing what we have to do when it is time to do so in various fora. Okay. And in a way, one way of kind of mitigating the problems posed by our lack of staff is to ensure that you have good relations amongst the staff of the mission itself, and then cultivate good relations with other people, be it in the capital, but also with other delegations, like at UNESCO. There is so much happening, and you cannot attend all the meetings, sometimes even the meetings that are of importance to you. So you cultivate good relations with other delegations that can inform you of things happening, even if you are not present, and that can warn you about certain things and so on. And also maintaining good relations with the staff of, for example, the Quai d'Orsay. The Quai d'Orsay is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in France. So especially with the director for Africa. And at one time, there was also a gentleman or a person who was responsible for relations with Indian Ocean states. So you maintain good relations with them. And also with their staff responsible for missions, for diplomatic missions. And just to give one example, there was of the importance of those good relations. There was an occasion where over one weekend, our phone was hacked, was used by people, probably in some other country, to make calls. And we got a bill of, it was in the 2 digits, what do you call it? 5 digits, thousands, if you like. And we say, how are we going to pay that bill? But because I had good relations with somebody in the embassy of Monaco, who the week before had told me that he had the same problem, and how he solved that problem was to talk to somebody in the French government. So I got on the phone and talked to that lady, and for half an hour. And the result was that they talked to the telecommunications company, and that problem was resolved. But they advised us to do something concerning our phone system so that we would not have the same problem. Ryan is telling me that I have 2 minutes. Can I have 5? Because I just wanted to give some examples of the kind of nitty-gritty work. I'll just perhaps use the example of COP21, November 2015. That's Ronny's baby, really. And that's Seychelles really invested in that conference on climate change. A lot of work, preparatory work, a good delegation in Paris, and good follow-up as well. Just to give you a little idea in the happenings. Seychelles was one of the lead advocates of the importance of limiting temperature rise to 1.5 degrees, because everybody, to get people, everybody to agree, they were talking of 2 degrees. And let's try for 1.5. We always insisted on 1.5. So we made every speech we made, every address, every meeting, we went 1.5, 1.5. And now everybody is talking of 1.5 as being crucial. So Seychelles was recognized as a leading advocate for 1.5. And when the Paris Agreement came into force, it was in November 2016, 1 year later, the French was very proud because many COPs before Paris had failed, and this one seemed to be succeeding. When sufficient number of countries had ratified the Paris Agreement, the French were very proud of their success. They lit the Tour Eiffel, the Eiffel Tower, up in green for that night or that week or whatever. And Ségolène Royal, who was the Minister for Environment, organized a meeting, and a meeting and reception to celebrate that. And Seychelles was one of 4 or 5 countries that was asked to speak at that meeting. And the embassy received a request to speak 3 days before that meeting. And like Peter, or perhaps less crucial, but I was saying, now, what do I do? What is it important to say at this stage, looking ahead now? So, of course, another way of surviving is to rely on your friends. So I contacted Ronny. Thank God for email and so on. And Ronny sent me the important points that we should now stress. And we did that. And we were the only small country. The others were big countries that were allowed to take the floor, but small country, but big voice. And I met Ségolène Royal at that meeting, of course. And I asked her about her trip to Seychelles because she came to Seychelles a few months before that. And that's another role of the mission, is to organize visits also of foreign dignitaries coming to Seychelles. she was very pleased with the meeting because she saw what Seychelles were doing. I remember she was very impressed with the coral growing initiative that Seychelles was doing. I'll end by mentioning, since we are at the university, I'll just give one example where our mission also worked for the university. In 2013, I think, the SQA, the Seychelles Qualifications Authority, had to do the evaluation of the university for its accreditation. And they needed an external person to be part of the team to do the evaluation. So they contacted the embassy. How can we get an external? So I had to go to UNESCO and explain the situation, and we got a professor from somewhere to come. And there was also the program with the IREST, the Institut de Recherche et d'Études Supérieures en Tourisme or something like that. That's the university was running a master's degree on that. And I remember at one time, the people at IREST were a bit upset because they thought that Seychelles would give up that cooperation because they heard about Shannon and so on. So I had to have meetings and several telephone calls with the director of IREST to say, no, that's not the case. Seychelles is still interested in the cooperation. There were other examples, but Ryan will kill me if I don't step down. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Shamlaye. Definitely time flies when there's so much interesting things to talk about. So now I would like to extend my gratitude to all the panelists for your very insightful insights and engaging discussions that you've had with your experiences. It was indeed very enlightening and thought-provoking. So now we have time for a few questions. I would like to open the floor. Should anyone in attendance have any question that they would like to direct to our panelists? You may raise your hand and we can get the mic for your questions. Thank you.
First of all, thank you, ambassadors, for those very engaging presentations. My question is for Ambassador Sinon, specifically on the evolution or improvement of Seychelles diplomatic relations in Africa. In your experience when you first started and by the time you were ending, how do you see it improve for yourself as an ambassador engaging with all these different REGs yeah, basically the whole improvement or evolution of how it got better towards the end of your tenure?
Thank you. I think what happened was without an embassy in Africa, we were absent in many, and probably we do not even know how many we were missing. But they were frequent meetings. I mean, I sometimes found myself in meeting about women empowerment, women. Say what we are doing, how we do things. So they were very interested. And the fact that we were a higher income country, for them it was like, yeah, but you have very small population, but integrating in those regional groupings. Today I'm happy that I see that there are groups here in Seychelles who are directly involved, for example, with COMESA, there are different, I know at least two groups. I know that there are Seychellois now working in SADC as professionals. And this is very encouraging because by the time I went there, we were absent even there. We were not applying for the jobs that are available, but now, nula. And one more. I did not mince my words, a little bit like my good friend here. We are small, but we are loud. So they heard us. They heard us, and I think now we are more, much more visible. Now, the thing I did not say was that actually when I was coming back, when I was told, come back, because we are under reform, economic reform, we actually closed 3 embassies. Closed South Africa, we closed Malaysia, and we closed UK for a while during this reform period, economic reform period. But I was called when I went to Foreign Affairs to say, I am leaving. They said, Excellency, go back and look at your budget to run your embassy. Tell us how much it is. So I went and I told the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Madam Nkosazana Zuma, that this is how much it cost me. But I only had a small embassy. 1 secretary, myself, 1 writer, then there was a security guard at the gate. And then there was Maria. And then there was Indra, was there working, although she didn't get the spouse around. My filing and everything, and you know, the place was operating straight and narrow. So I was very happy. Came back, I was beaming. She said, we will pay. You are not the only one that we will be helping. We are helping a few because when we were fighting to be free, you guys helped us. All the African countries helped our cause, international fora, etc. So now, for those that are struggling, we understand and we want to give back. I came, I was very happy. I called the minister, said, Mr. Bernard, Minister, I have very good news. He says, yes. South Africa says it will pay everything. I don't have to close the embassy. I don't have to come home. I stay. Yeah. You're an honest man. I'm going to ask you one question. And as you are usual, I like you to answer my question honestly. Of course, Minister. Peter, you know that sometimes you attend these meetings at the highest level, at ministerial level. Sometimes you are even the president there. Yes? Peter, if one day there is an issue, and I tell you, we tell you, Government of Seychelles, on this issue, we want you to vote no. Yes. Problem? No. You go to the meeting, the South African minister tells you, can we have your support on this? What are you going to do? He said, Minister, this one is very simple. He says, yeah, what is your answer? Say, I would vote yes. He said, that is the reason I'm telling you to pack your bags. Come home. Tell them we will be back when we are able. But for now, pack your bags. And I remember Minister Bonham, I remember him always for that, because he got me right in a corner there. And he asked me the right question, and I answered him honestly. I thought, well, if these guys are paying for everything, including my salary, how can I say no? I won't be able to say no. And usually in the meeting, Seychelles, South Africa is very close to one another. But the relations were that close that we were able to be seen, visible. We've benefited now. The organizations are seen as useful organizations for some of our professionals to go there. So that was my contribution.
Thank you. Thank you.
Morning, and thank you very much for your presentation. I have two questions for all of you. What do you think are the most important qualities one will need to be a successful ambassador? And secondly, given that a lot of the younger generation, they aim to be in a higher level position very fast, what advice would you give them, especially those who probably are aiming to become ambassadors or to reach that higher level position? Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question. First of all, I'd like to say that the job of a diplomat, of an ambassador, is not all glamour. There's a lot happening behind the scenes, a lot of hard work, and a lot of sleepless nights as well. But being an ambassador posted in a foreign country has a lot of rewards. As my good friend Bernard pointed out, okay, you get free housing, education for your under children, a car. That's about it. I mean, it is not a very, very lucrative or highly paid job, right? It takes a special person, right, to be an ambassador. Loyalty. Well, remember first, sorry, an ambassador accredited to a foreign country is a personal envoy of the head of state, like the head of state or the head of government, as the case may be. Therefore, you must have absolute loyalty to the government of the day. If you do not agree with any policy, as we mentioned, then the decent thing for you to do is to resign. So what are the qualities or the attributes of ambassador? Loyalty, certainly. Discretion, because there are many issues, things that you would discuss with your host country, which must remain confidential and a secret between the two governments. Also, you must have very good skills at communicating and negotiating. That's it. But as has been mentioned before, ambassadors can be divided into several categories, so to speak. First of all, you have the classic resident ambassador. That person is appointed by the head of state to be his or her personal envoy to the receiving state. Then you have a non-resident ambassador, okay, who is based in the capitals, okay, and trusted with specific tasks by the head of state, by the government to carry out. But both categories of ambassadors, resident and non-ambassadors, are equally recognized under the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. So they have the same, should I say, importance or recognition. Now, I digress ever so slightly. That has also been touched upon. An ambassador can be a career diplomat that is raised from the foreign ministry, okay, spent all his or her career in the foreign ministry, and then, comment dire en français, gravit les échelons, and eventually becomes an ambassador. Or you can have somebody, a political appointee, right, who also has a trust and the confidence of the head of state to represent him or her in the receiving state. My two colleagues, Bernard and Ronny, could be considered as political appointees, but with vast experience in their respective fields, which has contributed to their appointment and to their jobs in their various countries of accreditation. And then you have a third degree of ambassadors. There are senior officials, when they become, let's put it this way, in a kind way, when they become undesirable or represent a threat to certain persons in government, are sent very nicely overseas to represent their country. I mean, there's a case. There's a recent case. The former not chief of staff, I'm sorry, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, General Valery Zaluzhny, right? Zelensky was not too happy with his performance, and he's dispatching him as ambassador to the UK. Okay, this is one case which comes to mind. There have been several occasions. You know, army generals or police commissioners have been dispatched very quietly to another country. So-called promotion. I shall end here. Thank you. I hope I have responded to your question. Thank you.
May I just add to this? The UN is the place where you find the most politically appointed ambassadors, ex-presidents, ex-prime ministers, ex-ministers. There was one ambassador from one of the Caribbean states. I will not name the country. She was a lady. Became very popular amongst us, but we understood why she was there. She was used to be the wife of the prime minister of a Caribbean country, and they divorced. She, in her own right, was known to be one of the most famous, most efficient, toughest civil attorneys in the Indian Ocean. She was ferocious. Her husband appointed her ambassador to the UN. We met her, and then we found out later, but we came to love her because her tenacity as a lawyer in good in elections. There was an ex-prime minister of the Solomon Islands. He was one of the founding fathers of the country. And as he got older, he became a nuisance to his successors. And one thing about the Pacific, they have clans. Africa, you have tribes, but the Pacific, they have a lot of clans, and you've got to understand these cultural elders are very, very important. And he became a nuisance to his succeeding, and he kept interfering. Here's an ex-staff of ambassador in his own right now, of the mission. He knows all these politics. And they sent him to the UN because they couldn't silence him in the country, because he would use his cultural ties and his clan ties to speak out. And they succeeded very well, because as soon as he got to the UN, he started falling asleep in the meetings. So they had to send a second officer just to go to the meetings and take notes and give it to him. But this is all a part of how our small islands struggle to use whatever resources they have. But the AOC, the Islands of Small Islands, says we're all islanders. We think like islanders. Islanders think in a different way. And when an islander speaks in a room, you say, that's an islander. They're reasoning, whatever. But it helps. You have to be confident yourself. You have to have self-confidence. In my case, as he was alluding to, the fact that I was a journalist as a profession and I rose to become chief editor helped with communication skills. And in the Global Island Partnership, which Seychelles co-founded with Palau, I was known as the great communicator. In that I would speak to crowds on complicated issues and bring it down to a level where people say, oh, so that's what you're talking about. And that was the success of Seychelles. So it's self-confidence, but it's an extremely rewarding job. Look at the experiences. No one stuck in capital has the experiences that he went through. As he said, it can be terrifying. But over time, and this is what has helped Seychelles continue, the competence of our ambassadors of Seychelles, when they are properly trained, impresses people. And we have a tremendous amount of goodwill around the world. You would be surprised. Early on, Seychelles was known for its people. Right? Beautiful country, whatever. When a foreigner comes to Seychelles and they say, someone from a city, a Western country, a Western city says, your islands are beautiful, I expect you to say that. When you have people from the Caribbean and the Pacific, and they come to the Seychelles and they say, wow, Ronny, you have a beautiful country. Now you know you have a beautiful country because they are islanders. When they come and say, Ronny, you're doing all this. What was Antigua and Barbuda told me after visiting Seychelles? He says, Ronny, everything you are doing in Seychelles, we are doing. But you guys, you've taken it to another level. Oh my God, I'm proud. Seychelles has a lot of goodwill, and it was because of all these previous, we are very practical. We used to be very ideological, and then the world changed with the collapse of the Cold War. And everybody tended to move to the center, your center, left, center, right, whatever. And Seychelles has a very pragmatic and practical way of thinking, which impresses everybody. And we get treated in ways that Caribbean and Pacific countries, because of our geostrategic location, the Americans call us an unsinkable aircraft carrier. Everybody wants a military base in Seychelles. And the good thing we did is we never gave a military base to anybody, but we invited all their warships to come and visit because then they buy water, they buy food, or whatever. And in some cases, especially the French are used to, as soon as they get here, the officers disembark, get in a hotel and bring their wives over. That's all part of diplomacy. There's a soft power to it. And this is where our strength is. When you walk into Europe and you say, Seychelles, everybody says, oh, I wish I could go there. Don't bare your teeth until later on. You smile. And Seychelles has tremendous goodwill because of the performances, irrespective of the political party, the performance of Seychelles as a country. We have defied the odds. Early on in my career, when I was a minister, I was on a visit to Mauritius, and I was coming back on the plane, and next to me was a lady from the World Bank. It was Dutch. And she said to me, Minister, we at the World Bank, we have problems wrapping our mind around the concept that something as small as Seychelles is a country. If I could have thrown her out of the plane, I would have. That was before I became a diplomat. And I turned around and I said, you are coming to, I didn't say to her, I said, this woman is coming to Seychelles as the World Bank to pass judgment on a country that she thinks shouldn't exist as a country. So what's your value worth? That's when I learned from that. We'll show you. It's an extremely rewarding job. International travel, once you've done it a lot, it's not what it's all cut out to be. All airports look the same. If you travel to the Pacific, you cross the international date line and then cross it back, you're done. You're done physically, mentally, whatever. But to travel from New York all the way to Japan, and you go and register as a speaker, and you say, I'm Ambassador Jumeau from Seychelles. You're the Ambassador Jumeau. Did you know about me? In our circles, that's the climate, ocean. In our circles, who doesn't? And you say, Seychelles is that far. And it's extremely, extremely rewarding. So, and then when you come home, you go on social media and you look at our own Seychelles, when they're talking of Seychelles, that's another Seychelles. But as I said, being an islander, trying to communicate with the world is an education in diplomacy that no school can teach. Walk into a country and everybody says, wow, not so, you're excluding your masters, you're responsible for slavery, or you're the one who does this, and you're the one who, you walk in and say, now that's the country I want to go to. Makes you extremely.
To say anything according to Diana and Ryan. But, you know, I'm sure we have a lot of questions and I'm happy with filming it at the university because I think what you said, the four of you, for me, I learned a lot and thank you for this. I think that's what we're talking about when we talk about networking under the peace and diplomacy. It's not only for you to share your experiences with us, because we all know what you have experienced. Put in your words, it was more palpable for us. Sorry. And I would like to commend the Peace and Diplomacy Research Institute for choosing the four of you to start this, because we had a bit of everything in one panel. And for me, it was extraordinary to listen to you. I've been waiting for this for a long time. We've been trying to have this for a long time. Now, the University of Seychelles, we're standing on your shoulders, and some of you have contributed directly towards the creation of this, the thinking of this. We are at a point now that, as Ambassador Sinon was saying, the dream of having international relations, international students to come in, it's now that we're trying to get it to happen. And c'est pas anodin non plus to have you more involved with us because we need guidance, we need support, we need your experiences and your know-how and everything. You already participate, we know, because Ambassador Jumeau, I don't know if everybody knows, you've been one person in Seychelles contributing almost, I don't know if you know you still doing, you were still doing it, every month towards the university. And I would like for us to applaud you for this. Because when university started, some people were invited to donate. And until I think last year or this year, we noticed you were the only one left with somebody else, so two. So thank you for this and for the trust, you see. You helped build what we're having today. And I know Ambassador Sinon is always with us. Every time we're doing something for Africa or for economics or for everything, you always respond and you're always here. And Ambassador Shamlaye, I think he lives here because his knowledge in education, but not only in education, in culture, you have contributed in all the research institutes, I think. And we really appreciate every time we see you and every time you're contributing. And we have every Wednesday this research seminar. And I'm very happy that some former ambassadors do participate. We have others who are not here today, but who have been contributing. And Ambassador Butler-Payette, you know, you appointed me as well. So you have been involved in all the admin and running in a way from afar, but very close, supporting us always. So we are very grateful. And Ambassador Pillay, you are here today, but you've been here. I know we have more now relations with foreign affairs, thanks to people like you. So thank you so much, because foreign affairs is one ministry with which we work very closely on a daily basis. I see Rema, Vicky, we work very closely. So thank you for this. And the Assembly, I know now we've signed and we do work together. I hope this forum has helped you as well with what you're already doing at the Assembly, but we know we will have more talks. Actually, all I said to start with was not really what I was going to say. I would like to share as well what the university is doing internationally. We created this international and local engagement. And I know some people say, why don't we put local first before international? We're already securing local. We wanted to attract international. And I think it's played its role. We are invited now to a lot of international fora. I know Penda will be leaving soon. We're becoming names in different fields, not only in environment, but in Creole, in culture, in education. We have people now going abroad talking about their research, but representing Seychelles. So the university, that's a role that we play here. When I became VC, and in my speech I said, we are the university encouraging the world to come in through us and Seychelles to go out through us. Maybe it could be like pretentious, but no, that's the role we play with the size that we are, the number of students that we have. We will never have a class of 300, except if we bring foreign students in. To bring foreign students, you need money, you need reputation. So from what you have started to build, we are now trying to continue, and I'm happy that you have sort of accepted to help us internally in the university with this. And for example, just to share something, last week or 2 weeks ago, I was invited to the China-Africa conference. Actually, this year they got us twice there. You know, as a very small university, we don't raise our hands always from here to think that we would be invited to speak, but I've had to speak twice. And after each speech that we make, of course, Seychelles is already established, so they recognize us, climate change, etc. But after speaking, everybody comes to see us because they're not interested only in our beauty, they're interested in what we're doing here as a university, and they don't comprehend, including World Bank, how a small university can play so many roles in a country and attract international interest. And last time I spoke in Kenya, in Nairobi, we were 5 panelists, and I really didn't expect any questions. You know, you go there, you do your job, you present, you show our nice photos and all, and what we're actually doing with the Confucius Institute, for example. And I was the only one with questions. And something Ambassador Jumeau said, they don't think, we think what we're doing here is normal. When we go out there, they see what we're doing. How did you get this to happen? Because with the Confucius Institute that we have here, we can never compete in numbers. But we had, I think, Penda, Diana's institute worked with our Confucius Institute people, and they got a book published, our Chinese people, community in Seychelles. I thought everybody was doing this. So each time I speak, I said, we got to do that. And they wanted to know how we could liaise research with Confucius. So I thought it was something easy that we got happen, but everybody wanted to learn from this, and now they want to contribute with us for research. You see, so we also, when we go out, we feel this reputation that we've already built as a country, and we hope we're doing the best we can to honor our country, but we still need help. We need help because I know you have experience as well on grants. Our research institutes are forever looking for grants to do this research. For example, when somebody's invited, we need to have a pot for us to send them because that's the way you build your reputation. We do not have this. So what we have achieved for these 15 years, I think we've done quite well considering the kind of money that we have. But to keep our space there in this international sphere, we need to come together in this network, and maybe you could advise us as to how to get this to move further and better. Another thing, for example, when we were elected on IUF, you know, Agence Universitaire de la Francophonie, I was shocked because we have 49 other universities and they chose us. There must be something we were doing well. Okay, so, and from SADC, we are with Sarua. And from Commonwealth, we are with ACU. You know, we also affiliated with the university organizations falling under the organizations. So I think working with foreign department and working with our ambassadors, retired or not, and also the current ones, I think we can take the university to the next level. Because I think this is the objective now, to take us to the next level and attract people to come here and for knowledge or for say, like you said, we're going to bottle of water, but even more with the researchers coming in. So thank you for accepting to do this with us. I do hope, and I know my colleagues, we really hope that this can be an annual event. And hopefully more students will realize how important this is. And I see media here. I hope they do show quite a bit of what you all said, because I think everybody can benefit from this. And again, congratulations to the Peace and Diplomacy Research Institute and to all staff at university who helped make it happen, not forgetting Solo. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, VC, for your closing remarks. And Excellencies, as the VC has said, thank you so much for being with us today and for your future contributions as we build the network together for the betterment of the university. And ladies and gentlemen, we've now reached the end of our program. Thank you so much for your participation. And we have some refreshments. You know, it's lunchtime, but we have some snacks, and wish you a pleasant rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you so much.